Pleased to be joined now by special guest. I feel like I can't really even call him a special guest at this point. He's been on extra rounds here on UFC Fight Pass more than anyone else. This is appearance number 4. And Steve, you like invaded the Cage Warriors booth. So like, I feel like we're coworkers pretty much.
Yeah, dude. My first live MMA commentating experience, and it was fantastic. I loved it.
I mean, pound for pound, I think you're the biggest celebrity mixed martial arts fan there is on the planet. What was it like sort of breaking that threshold and being part of the broadcast team?
Well, I had fun making the point that I'm such a fan. I wanted to get closer to the cage, and that was the only way to do it.
I mean, you might not get cleared by a commission, so we got to keep you outside the cage, right?
Right. Yeah, man, it was just a great experience. I was super nervous going into it, thinking, like, don't blow this, like, because what a fun thing to be able to do again. And I think it went really reasonably well.
I mean, really reasonably well is a big win, I think.
I think so. I mean, presumably, like most things, the more you do it, the better you get. So to have had a reasonably good first try, I think it bodes well for future attempts.
Yeah, so I've called somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 fight cards since 2004, and it's funny when I'm not calling fights, I pretty much just say "oh shit" repeatedly over and over again. But when I am calling fights, can't say that obviously. So how different was it for you to like not just slip into fan mode?
I was just very mindful about the role that I was in. I of course had the help of Josh and Angie. So it was just really an exercise in finding the right moments to chime in and try not to sound dumb.
I mean, that's what I try to do in my daily life. So if you're doing that, not sounding dumb, it's a good start.
Right.
Good start.
Yeah, and if anybody watching/listening to this wants to see what we're talking about, it's on Fight Pass.
It is.
Cage Warriors 143. It was good. There were great fights. It was a lot of fun, man. I really hope I get to do that again.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any opportunity that we can get you to do it with me, I'd love to have that happen. I'd love to just get you on extra rounds and break things down. We tend to do that in these conversations, but we do want to talk about a hard kick in the nuts, what I've learned in a lifetime of making terrible decisions. It's a long book title, but it's very, very fitting because you made some terrible decisions, and I don't think they've stopped yet, Steve. I saw you like on a garden swing on the top of a semi or something recently, running around the freeway.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I thought we're supposed to learn from our mistakes, not doing them.
I don't know that I consider that a mistake. It's arguably a bad decision, but
all is well that ends well, I guess.
It was super cool, man. It was fun too. I was on a swing set mounted on a cube truck going 50 miles an hour down the freeway. It was really fun.
You see, like, I don't know. Like, I probably would have done that when I was 20, but now approaching 40, like, I just think like, wow, I'm way more weak and feeble and vulnerable to dying than I ever thought I was before. You don't seem to have that fear as you get older.
I mean, it was just odd. It felt dangerous, but yeah, it was just a really cool experience, man. I loved it.
Nice. The book is out. How do you feel people have been receiving it?
It's been great, with one caveat that on the pre-orders, I made it clear that it was possible to get signed copies via pre-order, but the page that people went to order the book by pre-order had multiple options to buy from various sellers, not all of which were selling signed copies. And
right.
I'm sure the page was very clear about that. And the pisser is that Amazon has a policy that they won't let anybody sell autographed things. So signed
Really?
copies were not available from Amazon. However, clearly a bunch of people who bought it from Amazon thought they were buying a signed copy from Amazon, which was never meant to be the case. And when it showed up and it was unsigned, said people were upset and bashed the book, giving it a 1-star review when all they were concerned with was the signature. So that's upsetting because there has not been a bad review of the book. It's been met with glowing praise from everybody who's critiqued it, and yet because people misunderstood the Amazon situation, it's just upsetting to me. I'm clearly upset about it.
That's a bummer. Hopefully they can come track you down and get the book
Well, I mean,
signed.
we're doing everything in our power to reach everybody and send them what's called a book plate, which is effectively a sticker that you stick in the book, which is what they did with all of the signed copies. But
Oh, cool. That's
yeah,
awesome.
we're trying to figure it out. But like what the book is about is, the idea of leaving a trail of upset people is, it goes against everything the book is about.
Right.
So again, I don't need to waste your time or anybody else's on it, but yeah, I'm pretty upset about the signed pre-order copy debacle.
But that's one thing that I appreciate about you is, like I said, from when our first interview happened, I think over a year ago at this point, like, despite never having met you before, Steve, I feel like you were one of my, crew in high school. You're a man of the people. You're kind of the everyman. And the fact that you're willing to be honest and open about something that is bothering you, a lot of other people would just be like, F you should know how to use Amazon better.
Yeah. I mean, I can see how it happened, you know, but it's just a bummer.
Yeah.
We're gonna fix it.
Let's talk about how people can get the book. Obviously, Amazon is one option. Are there any available autographed copies still that people can purchase?
There's Barnes and Noble. If you go to stevo.com and click the Barnes and Noble link, I think that it will be very clear that they're still sitting on some signed copies, which were intended for pre-order.
Cool. Well, hopefully people can get their hands on them. You watching the UFC this weekend? There's all this controversy about how the Apex is closed and you can't go in, media and fans alike. Everybody's got to watch on ESPN Plus or UFC Fight Pass. You can be watching Mackenzie Dern.
I've been like completely immersed in this book promotion and haven't like had a moment to breathe, let alone catch up on all the UFC news. But that sounds crazy.
Yeah, it's this little underline storyline. No one knows what's going on, but I do know Mackenzie Dern. What's that?
There's no explanation for it.
No, not really, not really. But that's kind of adding to it. I guess we're all going to figure out, or maybe we won't come Saturday.
I remember that Mackenzie Dern is headlining, but who's she fighting?
She's fighting Yao Jianan, the Chinese athlete. So that's going to be a good fight. Mackenzie Dern, she's lived up to her potential, but being the daughter of a highly accomplished mixed martial arts or a Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, and her dad Megan Son, like, I can't imagine the type of pressure that she's had coming into the MMA world. Everyone's expected her to sort of be champion by now, but this is a tough world.
For sure. She's been dominant in the UFC. I seem to recall that she had some trouble with the scales
at first, early on in her career. And then, one thing that I think is really impressive about Mackenzie is she's had a daughter and has come back.
Right.
And not many athletes, I mean, Juliana Pena is one of them as well, but not many athletes have been able to be an active mixed martial artist, have a child. Obviously, I'm talking about the women, right, but come back and be as good, if not better than they were before. It's an inspiring story, to say the least.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, to look at Mackenzie Dern, she looks very thin. Like, I almost feel like I wonder if she's gone down a weight class just looking at her, but I suppose she hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, she's still fighting the same weight class, but you are right. She looks a little more, I guess, comfortable in her skin fighting at the weight, because that's the thing, man. Like we've seen it time and time again. There are athletes that fight at a weight class where they're absolutely destroying themselves to try to get down to get that advantage.
Right.
I mean, we all know what happened with Hamzat Chimaev a couple of weeks ago when he's supposed to fight Nate Diaz. Like, missed the weight by like 9 pounds. So you always got to wonder, like, where are we going to come down here? But yeah, it's there are multiple battles in MMA, and sometimes they're not always in the octagon.
Is it true that Hamzat and Colby Covington is official?
I have not heard that being official yet. I mean, I'd love to see it though.
Oh my God, that's delicious. That's just so much fun. I've always publicly said that Colby Covington being the heel, the villain,
Yeah.
that I'm just so on board with it all, that I'm so invested in like proactively disliking Colby Covington. Like I enjoy disliking him so much that I find I'm actually rooting for him to win, because I always want him to be there for me to dislike.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a good heel, right? That's what the pro wrestling business is built upon.
Right. And then I just wonder too, like I imagine a Hamzat Colby Covington matchup, and part of me thinks, ooh, gosh, if Hamzat does to Colby Covington what he did to Kevin Holland, or even close to it, like it'll kind of break my heart, because like I said, I root for Colby Covington to win so that I can continue to dislike him.
Hamzat left the T-Mobile Arena to a chorus of boos after he, got through Kevin Holland. So I'm curious if we're not going to see some people actually cheering for Colby if that match were to come to fruition, because they're, not on Team Hamzat anymore.
I mean, people are just so finicky. I can't imagine that sticks. And I mean, him, that's just so fascinating, like everything about him.
Yeah.
And it genuinely does not matter if Hamzat gets booed or not. I mean, just what a compelling character.
No, 100%.
And that Colby Covington matchup is so I just pray for Hamzat to have no more issues with the scale, because I really do. Despite everything I say about rooting for Colby Covington, God, I just want to see that fight.
Yeah, no, definitely one to, like you said, delicious. I like that. It's a good adjective. I like. I'm gonna steal that, I think.
Yeah, delicious, because I mean, for all of Colby Covington's wrestling prowess, I mean, he just doesn't seem like a super powerful striker. I just can't imagine Hamzat like respecting the power in Colby Covington's hands, and like if it comes down to wrestling, like does Colby Covington get carried across the cage like Jin Liang,
Right. Yeah. I don't know, man. I have a hard time thinking Hamzat does that to Colby with his wrestling background, but never say never.
We got to see. We
Yeah.
got to see it. And then does Hamzat bounce back and forth between welterweight and middleweight? Like, it's just so much exciting stuff going on.
100%. I don't think you can make a bad fight with Hamzat Chimaev, but we'll see. It is curious to see.
One could argue that Nate Diaz would have been a bad fight.
One could argue for sure. Absolutely. One cannot argue that the fight with Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler is a bad fight. It's last time we spoke, it wasn't made official yet. It is now taking place, part of that Madison Square Garden card. I know you're a fan of both. Where's your head on that one?
I'm a bigger fan, I think, of Dustin Poirier. I've just had, I like to consider, Dustin as a personal friend of mine, and I've never met Chandler.
Right.
I wasn't a big fan of the way Chandler handled the whole like a COVID vaccination. Not that I even care one way or the other, but it's like, dude, shut up. Yeah, but then again, I mean, I think the last time we spoke was right before Gaethje and Oliveira
Yeah.
after Oliveira had defeated Dustin Poirier. And I was making the point that stylistically Gaethje and Poirier are just so similar that that it seemed, and I think that's how it played out. So it was kind of a bummer to see Gaethje go into Oliveira, if I've got that right, in the order that it happened. But God, by the same virtue, Gaethje and Chandler was like fight of the year.
Yeah.
And if stylistically Poirier and Gaethje being similar, then that bodes extremely well for Poirier Chandler.
You called Dustin a personal friend, so I kind of want to pick your brain on this. Chandler and Dustin got into it a little bit at a recent UFC event, and
I remember.
Yeah,
super,
and
super uncharacteristic of both of them.
So what do you think that does? Is that good for one over the other? Is it bad for both athletes to get that emotional?
I mean, I wonder. It reminds me of an interview with Robert Whitaker, when Robert Whitaker was saying that the way to get big fights is to talk trash and to be dramatic, and he says that's just not me. Like he was effectively saying that he understood he was foregoing opportunities to get big fights because it's just not in his nature to be a big trash talker, to be negative like that. And that's something that I really think Poirier, I think that there's a lot of Poirier in that Whitaker sentiment. And excuse me, and perhaps maybe Poirier was thinking, screw it, I'm gonna mix it up, I'm gonna make it interesting, I'm gonna get a storyline going. Maybe that was Poirier, like being strategic about getting that fight. I mean, I don't know.
They're both super professional, so I assume all that will be put to rest by the time they actually step in the octagon with one another. So, Steve, if I keep you one more minute longer, people are going to get mad at me, and I know you could talk about UFC all day, so I'm going to shut it down here. But thank you for the time. Best of luck with the book and continuing promoting that, and hopefully we can get you back on Fight Pass.
Thanks. And given that I already had the record for the most appearances on extra rounds,
right?
And now I've stacked another one on there. Like, let's just lap the division.
Why not? Why not? We can do it. I like it.
The division of celebrity fans.
Pretty soon it's going to be extra rounds with Steve-O, even when you're not here.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, man? But it's always a pleasure. My answer to the UFC is always yes, and I just always really enjoy talking to you. So thank you for the time. Thank you for mentioning the book, and we'll see you around the octagon.
My pleasure, Steve. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, for sure.